what is the next thing after you have a topic? What is the next thing you should do? The next thing you should do is develop what is called a conceptual framework. Develop what is called a conceptual framework. What is a conceptual framework? It is a schematic presentation of the relationship between variables. According to Delno Tromp and Kisilu Kombo, are a real authority in that specific area. They advise, and that has been the tradition. However, I cannot say that those who do it differently are wrong. Please note. But according to that, and it has been adapted as a tradition in most of the African universities and many other universities around the world, they break down the independent variable but leave together the dependent variable as it appears in the conceptual framework. Now, what is the argument that such paradigm has? The argument that is presented is this. When you are unwell and you need an injection or treatment for malaria, for example, you raise your hand, man. No, you can't say that is getting tired. Now, you are getting an injection or you're getting medication. Let me call it medication. Is it that you get multiple medications to treat one problem, or you get one drug to treat many problems? Okay. Which is supposed to be the norm? Is it you get one intervention to treat many conditions, or do you get many interventions to treat one condition? If you have malaria, chances are you have high temperature. Number two, chances are you feel like you want to vomit. Okay? Number three, there are the parasites themselves. So, in this treatment, chances are the doctor will give you maybe 3 different drugs. Or maybe there is one drug that combines all those. So that one part of this intervention goes to treat the fever. Another part of this intervention goes to treat the nausea. And another part of this treatment goes to deal with the malarial parasites themselves. Are you getting the thinking? Are we together at the back? So therefore, I hope you've taken this topic. I hope you've taken this topic. And this is researchable, especially if you have that connection to the problem. Yeah, it's researchable. It's one that is researchable. But remember, in many cases, the dependent variable, that's where the problem lies. Usually, the problem does not lie on the independent variable. The independent variable usually presents the intervention that we are trying using this research. And if we try it and it doesn't work, we will change. We'll try another intervention, right? Okay, I want to move on because I'm also looking at time. I will wrap this up to here. When going into the conceptual framework, the dependent and the independent variables are the two very critical aspects. Now, according to Delno Tromp, Kisilu Kombo, as I said, I believe 2009. According to them, it is the independent variable that is broken down because we need many interventions to deal with the problem. You understand? Now, tell me, what are the sub-variables or subsets of talent management that if we put them together, we will actually be talking about talent management? You know, when we ask, what are the parts of your body that if we put together, we'll say now, this is you. You understand what I'm talking about? You know, every variable has subvariables thereof. These subvariables will measure the variations in that main variable. In order for us to measure talent management, kindly give me 3 variables that will be used to measure what talent management is. Yes? Talent management. Talent management. In order for someone to carry out effective talent management, what are the subsets? What are the aspects you will need to do for us to measure talent management? Yes. Talent management. Yes. Reward could be related, but I'm looking for, if possible, I'm looking for terms that have the word talent. Talent something, talent something, talent something else, talent something else. Put together, it will be called talent management. Yes. Talent identification. There are chances that you may end up with a variable here that is actually another topic. How do you ensure that your children are actually yours? You check the ears. Yeah? You check the ears. Ears don't lie, my friend. Just check the ears. You see, when the guy is passing, you say, hey, this guy, hi, there is a problem here. You call the boy, you tell him jump up and down a bit, you check eyes, but the way he walks, he looks like he's mine. Is mine. But when he starts coughing, you feel, hey, this one is coughing like a foreigner. You get the point? It must be a subset. What we are talking about here must be a subset here. There is a risk of you ending up with a variable, a sub-variable here that is bigger than the variable you're trying to break down. Do you see that danger? Avoid it. It complicates your study. Talent identification is one subset of talent management. Yes. Yes? Talent acquisition. Talent acquisition. Please, I want now to go back to yours. Talent, reward. You know, reward management is not talent reward. These are different concepts, different thinking. Here we are talking about how much talent is rewarded. But if we talked about reward openly, ask yourself key questions. Can you vary talent reward? Can it vary? Can it go up and down? Talent acquisition, could it go up and down? Yes. What about talent identification? We could tighten, we could increase identification, we could reduce that identification. Now, let us leave the dependent variable as it is, staff retention. Now, we are going to introduce arrows of causality. What is causality? Causality is cause-effect relationship. It's called causality. We are introducing arrows of causality to show who is affecting who. Okay? Our arrows are going that way. That becomes a very basic conceptual framework, a very basic scheme that shows what affects what. Are we okay? Are we okay? Now, let me tell you what you have done by doing this. You have cleared with your objectives and you have cleared with your research questions. By doing this, you have cleared with your objectives and research questions. Let me begin with objectives. You have a question? Yes, please do ask.
Maybe we are not there, but I wanted to know whether there's a limit to the subsets of the independent variable.
It depends. Yeah, students have been asking many times, do I end up with 3 or 4 or 10? Please know that the more variables you have, the bigger your study is bound to be. At graduate levels, level, I've seen the tendency is between 3 and 5. I've rarely seen a study above that. What I'll tell you is that some universities will try to restrict students, but according to me, I think that is fallacy. It's absolutely ungrounded. That is just the way someone thinks. And you know, there is a way people think the research you did is the best research that could be done. You know, you as a lecturer, and I'm talking to people here, I know you're lecturers here. I know you're here as students, but I know some of you are lecturers elsewhere. Please, you don't have to make that study look like yours. Okay, I was talking to lecturers. Now I'm talking to students. You can have your freedom to choose. Okay? But what I'll tell you, in most cases, I've seen independent variables are usually between 3 and 5 at the graduate level. Are we okay up to that point? Now, if you have this and you have the topic, you have this scheme and you have the topic, then you can write your entire research. Is there a difference between variables and indicators? Please note, indicators are also variables. Indicators are variables. But when do we use the term indicators? Are you seeing under this presentation, there is the section M where we are talking about operationalization. Operationalization is creation of indicators. What are indicators? Indicators are measures of variables. For example, talent identification. In order for us to know whether this organization is doing good talent identification, what are the likely aspects that we will introduce on the questionnaire? Those very, very specific measures, those are the indicators. One example, how do we measure talent reward? I'll create subsets of talent reward, and one of them will be benchmarking. Okay, talent reward benchmarking. Are you getting what I'm talking about? I will carry out benchmarking for that purpose. But there is another very easy way. Talent reward. Remuneration, salary. Salary, that's very basic. Okay, we'll check salary and try to see whether there is relationship between salary and talent. You understand? So I will look for, okay, let me call it pay to talent. I'm just putting it together like that. Pay to talent. I will check pay. And those aspects that are actually indicators are specific, very, very specific. They are very, very specific. Chances are the questionnaire will reflect these issues. That is operationalization. We are going there, so don't you worry. But already we've tackled a part of it with that question. Okay? Are we okay up to that point? Okay. Operationalization means making it work. How do you make a variable work? You operationalize it by adding indicators. Okay? Now, I want to go back a bit. I said that if you have a topic and you have a conceptual framework, you have your objectives done. You have your research questions done. Let me make it clear. What was the topic that we had? What do? I want to use the board. And I want to squeeze. This is talent acquisition, and this is talent reward. Okay? Staff retention. So here we had staff retention. Okay. Then another variable here we had which one? Talent. Which was the second one? Acquisition, which is being tested to see how it affects that. And then the third one was talent reward, to see how it affects this. Now, what was our topic? What was our complete topic? It was the role of talent management in staff retention within the service industry. Where? In Kenya. When going to objectives, you don't go beyond that. You don't go into the study group. You just leave it there. And by the way, let me just caution you. There are students who keep assuming that the study group is so important. The study group is not important to you. If you went to a doctor and he wants to know if you have malaria in your body, and he asks you, now this is a simple example, just show me your finger. He wants to draw blood from your finger, and he pricks your finger and gets some blood. Is your finger sick or the entire body sick in case you had malarial parasites? Is it the entire body or your finger? Please note, the researcher is not interested in the study population. He is interested in who? The target group. So some students, as they write their objectives, you find them showing, oh, how this affects this within which case study was that? Sarova, whatever. No. If Sarova decided not to give us data, our research will not die. We will go to another organization within that industry. If your finger cannot be pricked, yeah? How many people? You play guitar? Yeah? Why did you pose on Facebook with a guitar if you don't play? For people who play guitar, sometimes you cannot prick their right fingers. You cannot. Doctors cannot prick. Tries, the needle can't go in. Why? Because they are always here. You understand? What happens? Does the doctor say, hey, your finger cannot be pricked, so we'll try, I don't know, now you just go home. We'll give you some blind shots. Of course, they will get blood from another part of your body, right? The interest is your body. The interest is the target population. Now, how do we then write our objectives? Point number one, your objectives will be as numerous as your independent variables. Your objectives will always be as numerous as your independent variables. Your objectives will always be as numerous as your independent variables. However, there are some cases where we may have more variables than the independent variables. However, I'll tell you the standard and what we have adapted. They must be as numerous as the independent variable. Now, how then do you develop the objectives? First, begin by operationalizing that objective. Operationalizing is making it work. Remember, later we'll talk about operationalization. There are aspects, there are ways of operationalizing. One way is by identifying the indicators. But there is also another thing you will see in research. They talk about operationalizing words. For example, to identify. So our first variable, we could use the word to identify. To identify. Which other word could you use instead of to identify? To establish. I heard someone saying that. To examine. To evaluate. To determine. To assess. There are so many words. Try as much as possible to think. Don't just write the word. Just think through it. But chances are, it will still operationalize. It's not big deal, okay? Now, to identify, let's go back to the topic. Now, the trick is, you go through the topic, but each time you reach the independent variable in the topic, skip that independent variable in the topic and replace it with the independent variable from the conceptual framework. Do you get what I'm saying? How to arrive at the objectives. For example, to identify, then start reading the topic. To identify, let's start reading the topic. To identify the role of, do not use this term. Don't use this term now. Go pick the smaller variable, smaller subsets, to identify the role of talent identification, and continue reading all the way to the full stop. To identify the role of talent identification in staff retention within the service industry in Kenya. Second objective, we change the word to identify to assess, for example. The role of talent acquisition in staff retention within the service industry in Kenya. Second objective. Third objective, you said to establish the role of talent reward in staff retention within the service industry in Kenya. Is it okay? Is it okay up to that point? What about objectives? You only turn the objective into question. Question. Give it a question tag. But avoid a question that the answer will be yes or no. We have to give questions that are generating academic value. For example, what is the role of talent identification in staff retention within the service industry in Kenya? Okay, so the question will be, what is the role of talent, all the way, repeat all the way to the end, and finish with the question mark. You get the point? There is absolutely no rocket science there. Very simple as it is. Is there any question up to that point? Anything that's not clear up to that point? Penelope, are you with us? My friend, Muasia, are you there or you are in another world? Yes.
Does it mean that the number of objectives will be influenced by those aspects of the independent variable?
Yes, I already said the number of objectives will be dictated by the independent variables. Independent variables are subsets of the independent variable in the topic. If you have 5, you will need to have 5 objectives and 5 research questions. If you have 4 independent variables, you will need to have 4 objectives and 4 research questions. Never make a mistake of having more research questions than the objectives. The objectives and research questions are talking the same language. Yes? Yes. He wants to test whether these objectives will be smart. Now, let me first of all explain the SMART concept. SMART. If you're traveling from Nairobi to Mombasa, and you are writing a research about this journey, and the research, the title will be, I'm just creating something, effects of journey from Nairobi to Mombasa on the holiday mood or holiday relaxation. Okay? I'm talking about the journey. How that journey affects the relaxation, the holiday mood, the, okay? I'm creating, that's just a creation. My first objective could be effects of journey from Nairobi to Kibwezi on that relaxation. My second objective could be effect of journey from Kibwezi to Voi on that same relaxation, holiday relaxation. And the third objective could be effects of journey from Voi to Mombasa on that holiday relaxation. Are you getting the aspect that we're talking about? The point is, your independent variable must be seen to reflect what we have here. Many students enter pitfalls. Why? Because they end up with variables which are not related to the independent variable in the topic. Please remember, the independent variable in the topic is the mother of all the independent variables you have on the conceptual framework. And that is where the SMART aspect comes into perspective. They have to be specific. Are these not specific? They are specific. They are not as general as talent management. Talent management is general. And that's why it appears in the general objective. But all these are called specific objectives because they come from specific variables. Specific from the word SMART. Specific. Measurable. Can you measure talent identification? Yes. Operationalization. Section M. We are going to talk about operationalizing these same variables. So they are measurable. Operationalization is about measuring them. Every time I ask, can we measure? Can they be measured? Can they vary? Anything that can vary can be measured. That varies can be measured. True or false? If something varies, you can measure and see, hey, here it is high, here it is low. It is measurable. Now, Ask yourself whether they are realistic. Ask yourself whether you could achieve collection of data within specific time bound. It is possible. You carry out this research and you complete it and graduate in 2016 with this one. You can. You need just a few weeks to go collect data and analyze this data. It's doable. So it is smart. Okay? That is how you look at it. Okay? Any other question? Because I want to move on to the next point. I want to move on to the next point, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. Apart from the independent and dependent variables, we have other types of variables. Yes, we have many other types of variables. What I've done here, ladies and gentlemen, I've just presented a simple scheme showing relationship between variables. But there are many other types of variables. We have independent variables, we have dependent variables, we have intervening variables, we have confounding variables, we have moderating variables. All those variables exist, okay? And others, we have many more. For example, what are intervening variables? If there was a variable that if you check talent management and staff retention, you notice there is something between. There is a variable between these two. That variable is called intervening. For example, you may notice that pregnant women suffer from a problem of absenteeism. Pregnant women and absenteeism. But you may note that between pregnancy and absenteeism, there is something else. For example, healthcare. So healthcare becomes the intervening variable. Please ensure that the variables you choose for your study, avoid bringing variables that have intervening variables that you did not present. You didn't show they exist. Do you get the point? You know, there are cases where you may say this affects this, but when an examiner looks at it, how? That corruption causes climate change. You know, you are even stretching the minds of the academic class. What are you trying to say? But it's true that there are possibilities that corruption could lead to deforestation, which could affect climate change. You get the point? Avoid bringing variables and assuming that they affect each other, yet there exists another intervening variable. Moderating variable. What is a moderating variable? A moderating variable is that which its introduction could change the direction of the relationship or the level of effect. For example, there's a variable called I'm looking at a class. What affects performance? What affects performance? Tell me something that affects academic performance in a class. What affects academic performance in a class? Yes? Absenteeism. Now you want to stick with that one that I introduced only. Now Tokufa na hiyo, we'll die with that one. We'll continue hammering that one. Yes, another thing? Yes?
Pedagogical approaches.
Yes, pedagogical approaches. Pedagogy is like teaching methodology. It's the same thing. This guy is just confusing us with big words. You understand? It's the same thing, teaching methodology, pedagogy. Okay, now pedagogy could affect academic performance, true or false? But it could affect teaching methodology more to maybe men than to females. Now, gender is a moderating variable in that relationship. Are you getting what I'm saying? When you introduce gender, you may see different results. You understand? You may realize gender becomes another way to look at it. That for men, teaching methodology might not even affect academic performance. In fact, that's what I see in this class. Men can pedagogy, even if a teacher is a rock, a male student might survive. But ladies with their small hearts, oh my God, I can imagine the teacher, this teacher, I'm not getting what he's saying. And by the way, by the end of the class, you find the ladies are now checking their nails. Now, me, I've given up, I can imagine. I've given up. Are you getting what I'm talking about? Yes, moderating variables. But right now, that is not important for us. That's not important for us because we are just looking at the most simple scheme, okay?